Ever found yourself lost, wondering where to discover the latest trends and flagship stores to shop in Singapore? Well, not anymore.
So RJ, now let's come to my favorite topic.
Yeah.
I love shopping.
Yeah.
And we spoke about Jewel the last time. Jewel is one iconic shopping center now for anyone,
Yeah.
locals and travelers alike. My first experiences in Singapore about shopping, probably Mustafa, like every Indian traveler.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And Orchard Road.
Yeah.
Right? But let's dive into shopping a little, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is shopping like in Singapore for a local like you? And if you were to take me around, where would you take me?
So I will say that shopping is always fun, regardless. But I think that what makes things special about Singapore, and whether it's like Mustafa, whether it's Orchard Road, just generally the experience of Singapore in shopping, is that it's an experience. It's not like, it doesn't ever feel like a chore or like a regular shopping experience. It's turned into a whole other sort of experiential, immersive kind of retail in and of itself, right? And one great example, I think, that comes to mind immediately when you talk about this is Marina Bay Sands.
Yeah.
So Marina Bay Sands, of course, is the iconic hotel. There's the rooftop and whatever, the pool and everything is amazing. But the shops is really interesting. So of course you have your luxury boutiques and so on, but I don't know that I've seen any other shopping mall in the world that has a canal that goes up and down the middle of the entire mall, and where you can take boat rides up and down. So that's spectacular in and of itself, and that's an example, for instance, of how shopping in Singapore is really like strange and unconventional and just really fun. But again, in Marina Bay Sands, one thing that's really special is the Apple Store.
Yeah,
have you been there?
iconic. I haven't been there, but I've read a lot about it.
It's magical, and I'll tell you why. So first, you go into the Apple Store actually via the basement.
Okay.
Right? So it's underground. But what you don't realize is that it's not only underground, it's also underwater. So when you enter, it's like a long passage. And of course, there are the products and everything, the long tables, the Apple bar, they call them, right? But the real magic comes when you get to the other end of this long passage and you go up the flight of escalators and you essentially emerge into a glowing orb of Apple. That's the only way to put it, right? It's all surrounded by glass, and it's an entire sphere. It is the world's only Apple store that's surrounded on all sides by water. So it's essentially floating on the water.
Trust Apple to do this, right?
I know. Yeah. And you, because it's on the Marina Bay, Sands waterfront, right? You get 360 views of just the entire most iconic part of Singapore. And it's just like an experience in and of itself. And so I think that's what I mean by shopping in Singapore almost feels like going to an attraction.
Now, of course, there are shopping centers and all of
Yeah.
that, right? But when I think of shopping in Singapore, I'm looking for the local stuff, right? The local artisans, local artists,
Yeah.
and the different things that they have done. Because brands you get everywhere. You probably have brands in India also now. So where would you take me if I wanted something like that?
So you mentioned Orchard Road earlier.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Orchard Road is famous for its flagship stores. The Uniqlo flagship store is amazing. You get Uniqlo in India. The Zara flagship is amazing. You get Zara in India. I will say in the middle of Orchard Road, there is this one complex called Design Orchard.
Design Orchard.
And it's exactly for what you're saying, right?
Okay.
Say you want to find a very unique Singaporean souvenir that is not just like a fridge magnet, or it's also not just like regular shopping. And so it's a whole department store, very contemporary, and it's built around the idea of Singapore's independent designers.
Okay.
So you go in and it's literally everything from fashion to apparel to accessories to home stuff to souvenirs, right? It's a whole range of stuff, but the one common thing is that they're all independent Singaporean designers, and the space itself is an incubator for young Singaporean designers to do their really, really creative stuff. So you get very, very iconic Singaporean brands sitting next to very, very emerging artists in Singapore, and I think that's always such a special place to find something unique. I mean, Charles & Keith is amazing in Singapore, don't get me wrong. The flagship store is beautiful. But if you want something that is truly, that nobody else will have, I will say Design Orchard is where it's at.
And what are some Singapore-based brands that haven't reached India?
Yeah.
People probably don't know about,
Yeah.
but you just want to mention them, not like wanting to promote them,
no.
but just some that come to your mind.
So two that come to mind instantly, just because they're so iconic in my mind. One is called Reckless Erika. She's this wonderful designer, and who is, I guess, reckless, but reckless with her prints, right? So she
Okay.
does all these printed garments, so ladies' gowns and blouses and so on. But what's really cool is she incorporates very Singaporean motifs in very abstract ways.
Yeah.
So only if you look closely can you tell that, oh, it's actually a durian, or oh, it's actually a fish head. But it's done in very tasteful ways, so that from far it's really just beautiful print. And then another one, still on the point of prints, is Onlewo. Onlewo. And so Onlewo is a designer who draws on a lot of his Peranakan heritage.
Okay.
And so he features a lot of these Peranakan motifs on scarves. He does cushion covers. He does these like beautiful lamps that have the prints of very iconic Singapore buildings on them. And again, done in very tasteful ways. That's not obviously a fridge magnet type of souvenir.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was shopping in Singapore.
Yes.
I just still want to ask you one more question about shopping.
Yeah.
Like if someone had to get 3 things for their loved ones back from Singapore as souvenirs
Yeah.
back to India,
Yeah.
what should they get?
Well, that's a tough one for me because I'll probably say all food
Yeah.
items. So food items for sure. I think we've talked
Yeah.
about that on the last episode. I would say definitely like some of the ceramics that we have in Singapore. There's a wonderful brand called Supermama that
Supermama,
does a
okay.
lot of their designs inspired by, again, Singaporean motifs. But their production is in Japan. It's in Arita, which is a part of Japan that is very famous for their blue and white porcelain ware.
Okay.
So exquisite items that have very, very sort of signature Singaporean motifs on there. And you can find their store at the National Museum of Singapore. And then, again, like if you're looking for homeware, Onlewo is always a great choice. And then I will say that, again, going back to the idea of food souvenirs, one of the most iconic souvenirs in my mind of Singapore is Erwin's potato chips. And so these are potato chips that have, I think, gone viral at some point, but I love them. And they're essentially these potato chips that are flavored with salted egg yolk, which is a very iconic
very
Singaporean,
Singaporean,
Southeast Asian flavor. But it's done, and they have the curry patta inside. They have a little like bits of chili, the very small spicy bird's eye chili in there as well. So it's just a wonderful snack to take home with.
Awesome. I guess that leaves us with a good list to bring back from Singapore. On a few episodes back, you were like, okay, when you're shopping, you want to eat, right? And we talked about eating at shopping centers. After eating a lot, you feel sleepy. That's why you need the coffee. But the coffee in Singapore is not called coffee. It is called?
No, it's called Kopi.
Kopi.
Yes.
And Kopi has a whole culture around it, right?
Oh, yeah. We're obsessed with our coffee, so much so that we've created a whole language around that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think in Singapore, our lives are spent shopping, eating, and then drinking coffee.
That's pretty good. That's a good life. That's a good life to live.
Of course.
So if there's a whole culture around Kopi or coffee, then I guess it deserves a full episode also around it. So the next episode, let's talk about Kopi.
But also, maybe we should get a coffee now.
Yes, let's do that. Awesome.
Amazing.
Let's go.